The Ohio State Buckeyes have been playing with their hair on fire ever since their loss to Michigan. So what happened? I think Michigan fixed the Buckeyes. I'll explain. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked on Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are just about here. Not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, how Michigan fixed Ohio State. Plus, the Big Ten clearly is greater than the SEC. That's the theme here. We're going to drive it home. Fire Ferentz? What's going on at Iowa? And the Gophers still have a bowl game. Plus, we'll have our pigskin pick at the end of the program. But right now, let's get into it. Lots I want to get off my mind here. Since the postseason began, the Ohio State Buckeyes have been the hottest team in America. The regular season ended with a dud when they suffered a home loss to Michigan, a game they were favored by 3 touchdowns in. That loss also cost them a chance to win a Big Ten title. And just like that, 2 major goals of this football team that this is a program that expects to win every single game. 2 of their biggest goals with a roster built in $20 million of nil money, just all that's unattainable. Off the board. Can't get it. The 2024 record will show that this Buckeyes team did not win the Big Ten title, nor the rivalry game to the team up north. But they might win a national championship. In fact, I think they really might win a championship. So that trumps everything else, right? Well, it should, although Columbus can be a little complicated as a place when it comes to that season-ending finale against Michigan in November every year. But most places that would trump everything. So what happened since that rivalry loss in November? When it seemed like the sky was falling in Columbus, right? We were everybody talking about Ryan Day and his future and what's going on. It was really crazy for a few days. But I think Michigan fixed the Buckeyes. So let's discuss this a little bit. I think it was kind of like when NFL teams scrimmage against each other in August. They've been practicing against each other. They're tired of 2-a-days and going at it. They want to play somebody else. And then they learn things about themselves by playing somebody else for a change. Kind of see how their stuff works against other people. I think to some extent that finally happened after going through the regular season, but then playing Michigan at the end. Let's face it. If this year's Michigan team played this year's Ohio State team 10 times, Ohio State would have won that game 9 out of the 10 times. In fact, if they played 10 more times after the one that Michigan won, Ohio State might win 10 of those. So what happened? What's different now? Well, first of all, let's not blame the Buckeyes defense. They did their job against Michigan back in November. Gave up just 1 touchdown. They shut down quarterback Davis Warren, held him to 62 yards throwing, 0 touchdowns, and picked him off 2 times. No receiver caught more than 3 passes against the Buckeyes defense. So let's look at the offense. Quarterback Will Howard, probably his worst game of the season. And he seemed to succumb to the pressure of the moment. He wanted to come in. He'd only been there a year. It was the pressure of the game with all of his teammates. A lot of his teammates have been there numerous years. He wanted to come in there and help be the hero and give them what they wanted, that win over Michigan. And he threw 2 costly interceptions in this game. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, they combined for just 67 yards in that game on the ground. And it, could be noted that, look, Michigan, they're pretty good at stopping the run, okay? And they did that on that particular Saturday. All right, so if you're Ryan Day and you're Chip Kelly and your plan is to run the ball and that failed against Michigan, well, the Buckeyes have awesome wide receivers. No problem. Freshman sensation Jeremiah Smith, he only had 5 catches for 35 yards against the Wolverines, although he did score a touchdown. So how can one of the lesser Michigan teams in modern history shut down both Ohio State's running game and passing game? Could come down to toughness. It could. Look, I know Buckeyes fans bristle at that comment. That's a sore spot. They don't like to hear that. But Michigan was the tougher kid on the block that day. And maybe the Buckeyes thought they were being tough, at least against some teams. But this was the last remnants of a soon-to-be former defending national champion Michigan team. They still had some bones, some structure of that old team. And they showed Ohio State just how tough they could be. And the Buckeyes needed to up their toughness one more notch. Sitting around an extra week after playing that game couldn't have helped either. That had to be a tough time. So, the following week, Penn State they leapfrogged over Ohio State, and they went on to play Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Meanwhile, Ohio State kind of had a feeling of back to the drawing board a little bit. And look, that had to be difficult. There's no question about it. And they couldn't get that taste of defeat out of their mouth because they weren't playing a game that next week. So they had to sit on that for a while. It was time for some deep soul searching. And soul searching is an area that the Buckeyes and Ryan Day in particular have been good at. And I mean that sincerely. So Ryan Day, look, let's go back in time a little bit. He revamped everything coming up short at the end of last season. Rededicated himself to construction of perhaps the best roster in America, the nil deals, transfer portal, all that. And then they came up to the Oregon game in October, and they fell short, literally by a point and a second. And he did some soul searching again. In fact, he said he came pretty close to revamping the entire defense after giving up 32 points to Oregon. He says, we can't be giving up 32 points to good teams. We got to revamp everything. But he thought better of it. He had a bye week coming up, and they just doubled down and worked on what they do. And it seemed to pay off. So for the rest of the season, the rest of the regular season, nobody scored more than 17 points on the Buckeyes. So the defense has been dialed in, even in that Michigan game. Then some soul searching took place again at the end of November after the Michigan game. Yeah, the team needed to play tougher. I don't know if you can coach that. I don't know if you could teach that. That has to come from the players. And it has since then. It really, really has. Is there a tougher team than Ohio State right now, particularly in the trenches on both sides of the ball? Not from what I'm seeing. Not from what I'm seeing. Their offensive line is winning battles in the trenches. The Buckeyes' defensive front is lights out. All those guys working on draft status higher and higher on that defensive line. Don't be in the NFL. There's another element to the Buckeyes' toughness, and it's coming from a position that is usually associated with finesse and speed. And that brings me back to freshman Jeremiah Smith. He might be the toughest player on the team, literally. And I think since the end of the season, Chip Kelly quit thinking of Smith as this up-and-coming, sky is the limit, awesome wide receiver, and started thinking of him as their first, second, and third option on offense, because that's what they should do. Get him the ball at all costs. And that's what they've been doing here in the postseason. And he's just phenomenal. Now, you got people having discussions now. Well, I know he's just a freshman. I'll bet he could play in the NFL right now if the rules allowed for it. Maybe, maybe not. I'd lean toward maybe. In their first playoff game against Tennessee, Smith had 6 catches for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those are the numbers he should have put up against Michigan. In their follow-up game, of course, against number 1 Oregon at the Rose Bowl, he had 7 catches for 187 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He got 161 of those yards and 2 scores in the first half before the Buckeyes closed out the game with their toughness and their running game with Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And now, and only now, are we seeing the Buckeyes team that we expected to see all year. They've been good all year. The 2 losses by combined 4 points. They've been good. The last 2 games, they've been phenomenal. Had they been playing like this from the beginning, they'd been ranked number 1 and undefeated by a long shot all season long. Something has definitely gotten into them. So, and now maybe they may be good enough to win a national championship. Great enough to win a national championship. And they might have Michigan to thank for it. It sounds weird, Ryan Day was asked that exact question, by the way, in the post game of the Rose Bowl, and he acknowledged it. He didn't really want to answer. He said, "Look, I really don't want to put it in those terms because he didn't want to say yeah. He didn't want to thank Michigan for anything. I get it, but he did kind of acknowledge the situation. He had a good answer. He said, "Look, we are a sum of everything that has happened to us and our experiences throughout the whole season, and without saying so, that includes the Michigan loss and maybe the earlier Oregon loss." And now they're ready to go. They look unbeatable. Buckeye fans, let's hear from you. Hit us up with the comments. Love it on YouTube. I'd love to get it going back and forth. That was a phenomenal performance in the Rose Bowl a couple of days ago. Hey, in the meantime, if you haven't hit that subscribe button and follow Locked On Big Ten for free, wherever you get your podcast, and that way you get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And if you don't mind, also share, like, and follow. That helps us out. We help you. You help us. It's all fantastic. But if you subscribe, you get this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And don't forget to check out our website, talkbig10.com, where we put all of our podcasts. And you can also get Big Ten team merchandise right there. Get New Year's savings with all that. Get ready for the rest of 2025. That's at talkbig10.com. All right, lots I want to still get to here. First of all, I want to talk about how the Big Ten is just better than the SEC. It's a favorite topic here of us on this podcast, but we can really drive it home with some facts. Big Ten greater than SEC. It gets SEC fans all wound up. Somebody wants Kirk Ferentz fired. I don't like that. I'll tell you what that's all about. And we have one more Big Ten team playing a bowl game, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Well, some thoughts on that. It's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. FanDuel makes the excitement of watching games even more exciting. And, of course, the NFL playoffs are just about here, but it's not too late to get in on regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet. FanDuel, tons of ways for you to win. Points, point spreads, players, stats, all that right there. Just visit FanDuel.com today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 of bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Sunday Night Football, Vikings at Lions with everything on the line. 28 wins between them. Lions are 3-point favorites at home. How do you feel about it? You can do that right there at FanDuel. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. You everydayers out there especially. Thank you. And we want to make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and share and follow like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget to check out our website, talkbig10.com. All right. I have a lot of fun on this podcast. I presume you guys do too if you're Big Ten fans. I'm tweaking SEC fan. You all know somebody at work or your friends that love the SEC. They don't even consider that anybody else could be better than the SEC, like the Big Ten. They won't even consider it. They have arrogance and dismissiveness. They do. And clearly the Big Ten is a far superior conference than anybody else, including the SEC. In fact, if you want to set off an SEC fan, just tell them the Big Ten's better. Just sit back and watch. It's like lighting a fuse on a firecracker. It's hilarious. Everyday average fans, they're like this as well. The SEC fans and the talking heads like Paul Feinbaum, Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin, they wouldn't even hear of it. The SEC is the best, and that's the end. That's how they feel. Anyway, they're wrong. They're wrong. See, the problem with the argument that they have that the SEC is better than the Big Ten or anybody else, facts, actual facts. I'll give you some. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 5 head-to-head matchups between the Big Ten and the SEC in bowl games and playoffs. The Big Ten is 4-1. They'd be 5-0 if it weren't for a last-second field goal. Ohio State, they're supposed to be the third best team in the Big Ten, right? They just dismantled the third-place team in the SEC in Tennessee. Those two teams aren't even on the same planet when it comes to ability, from what I've seen. USC, Much maligned, struggling through the season. They defeated Texas A&M. Michigan beat Alabama twice in the same calendar year, January 1st last year and December 31st, 2024. Illinois beat a pretty hot South Carolina team. In fact, the only SEC team to beat a Big Ten team this postseason has been Missouri, which needed a late field goal. In fact, 2 late field goals to beat Iowa. Otherwise, it would have been a 5-0 sweep. Let's not also forget in the current playoffs, we got 2 of the last 4 teams standing. Ohio State and Penn State from the Big Ten. Oh, and until January 20th, the Big Ten team, Michigan, is still the defending national champion. Hey, speaking of that loss by Iowa to Missouri, it was a pretty harsh piece in Sports Illustrated regarding the future of Kirk Ferentz. The piece suggested that there have been so many changes in college football. The game has just passed by Kirk Ferentz, and it's time for him to say goodbye, or for Iowa to say goodbye. Certainly, there's no doubt that Ferentz, having just completed his 26th season at Iowa, as he's as old school gets. Minimize risk. Don't take chances throwing the ball. Don't beat yourself. Run the ball. Play great defense. That's what he does. That's who he is. That's what Iowa football is. And in fact, if I were to describe Woody Hayes, that's exactly the same description I would use for Woody Hayes as I would with Kirk Ferentz, except Kirk wouldn't hit another player like Woody did. Ferentz, by the way, is just 1 win away from tying Woody Hayes' mark of 205 wins as the all-time win leader in Big Ten history. And Iowa's not going to part with him 1 win away from that mark. That'd be ridiculous. They wouldn't do that. Plus, he's still under contract from 2029. And his current buyout is $42 million. Schools like Texas A&M might pay off Jimbo Fisher's $77 million contract, but Iowa, they're not going to take a hit like that. Oh, and by the way, Ferentz won 8 games this year. That's good. He won 10 last year. Got the Hawkeyes to a Big Ten championship game. He's posted 12 straight winning seasons. You do not get rid of a guy like that, even if you are frustrated with him. Name me a fan base that doesn't get frustrated with his coaches from time to time. He's getting talent, and he's developing talent. A lot of good players, a lot of good things happen. He sends a lot of people to the NFL. A lot of good players. You go, oh, who are they? Oh, yeah, that was an Iowa player. A lot of them. A lot of good things are happening at Iowa. So Iowa's not going to fire Ferentz. If they do, that'd be a huge mistake. That's my opinion on that piece. I didn't like seeing it. I thought, that's a little clickbaity, perhaps. I know some people are frustrated, but no way do you get rid of Kirk Ferentz. Let him walk away when he's ready to walk away. And look, that'll be sooner than later. He's been there 26 years. Let him get the record and then decide what he wants to do. Meanwhile, I'd love to hear from you on the comments on that as well. Iowa Hawkeye fan, haven't heard from you in a while. Let's do it. Hit us up on YouTube with some of those comments. We do have some Friday night Big Ten hoops tonight. Iowa, speaking of them, they're at Wisconsin, 7 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. 18th ranked Michigan State is taking on Ohio State tonight. That's an 8 p.m. Eastern game on Fox. Saturday, we got 15th ranked UCLA taking on Nebraska, 2 o'clock Eastern on Fox. Michigan is at USC for an 8 o'clock game on Fox, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. And then we have some Sunday games. Indiana is at Penn State. That's at noon on the Big Ten Network. Northwestern taking on 20th ranked Purdue, 2 o'clock Sunday on the Big Ten Network. We also have Maryland at number 9, Oregon on Peacock for late afternoon, early evening game, and number 22, Illinois taking on Washington. Actually, I believe the Maryland-Oregon game is 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. Same thing with Illinois and Washington, 4 and 1 on the Big Ten Network. And a couple of noteworthy games on the women's slate this weekend. UCLA, number 1, women's. UCLA, number 1, UCLA at Indiana. Noon Eastern Saturday on Fox, and on Sunday, 8th ranked Maryland versus number 23 Iowa in a top 25 matchup, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on the Big Ten Network. All right. So we do on Fridays, we do pigskin picks. I just have one pick for you with a little bit of analysis. We still have one more Big Ten team that's not a college football playoff team, but a bowl game, the January 3rd bowl game. Got all that with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. That's coming up next here on Locked On Big Ten. Rocket Money helps you find all of your subscriptions. You can't keep track of everything you have subscriptions to these days. All of it. I've got tons. You have tons. Sometimes you forget about them and they keep charging you. Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And it brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even your goals that you want to hit this year, brand new year, 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. It saves members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, it is time for our pigskin pick. Again, if you're new, we do picks on Fridays. Pretty soon we'll be switching over just to basketball picks and what have you. Mondays, check it out on Monday. We'll have my Big Ten top 10 observations from the weekend. Tuesday, tweets. Wednesday, our power rankings. Thursday, we look ahead at the Big Ten Network and the Big Ten Classics and live action. And Friday, we make picks. So let's do this. We'll put it on full screen. And we'll get a couple of things. If you're audio only, we'll describe them in detail. It's just one game here we're going to do. And it's going to be the Duke's Mayo Bowl with the Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on Virginia Tech in this game. A couple of things I want to tell you about on this game. First of all, PJ Fleck, I'm going to tell you, pretty good year for PJ Fleck. Minnesota 7-5, Virginia Tech 6-6. This game is at 7:30 Eastern tonight on ESPN. Gophers are 8.5-point favorites. The over-under 42.5. Now, before I make my pick on this game, I'll tell you about PJ Fleck real quick. Big wins this year against USC. Beat a 10-win Illinois team. Well, they got to 10 wins. They lost to playoff-bound Penn State by 1 point. And I got to admit, I was skeptical when I heard, this is kind of a pivotal year for PJ Fleck. Like, they were down last year. They had been winning games. They used to win 8 games every year. And they needed a bit of a bounce back here. And podcast if he could play at this level. But I think he delivered. And we've talked about this. I've changed my mind weeks ago on this very podcast. And he was helped out by a running. By the way, he developed and got better each and every game. I thought he was helped by a running game, which has always been a key trademark of the Gophers. This year, led by Darius Taylor. They got Daniel Jackson at receiver. He had a big year. But the Gophers' secret sauce this season has been their secondary. 16 interceptions among the very best in college football. And they had 58 pass breakups as well. Very active in the secondary. Now, Virginia Tech, they don't throw the ball that much. They've only thrown 15 touchdown passes against 8 interceptions on the year. So they're a run-first offense, but I don't think they have enough weapons to keep up with the Gophers. I like the Gophers to win by a couple of scores. That means they cover the 8.5. I do like the under 42.5 because I think Minnesota's defense is going to play good. When you have a one-dimensional offense like Virginia Tech, I think that plays into Minnesota's favor. Give me Minnesota to cover the 8.5 and keep the under at 42.5. There you have it. That's our pigskin pick. Just one pick, just the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That I wonder though if they win this game. I have a thought for sure. If they win, does that mean Max Brosmer starts doing Duke Mayo commercials the way Will Levis did? Nobody likes that Will Levis commercial. It's creepy. Where he's sitting there doing the splits, kind of in a Zen mode with his mayonnaise. I don't like it. Instead of dumping Gatorade on the coach on his bowl game. So PJ Fleck with his clean bald head and his tie, going to get mayonnaise dumped on him. That's the tradition, unlike any other. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. So check it out. All right. Coming up on Monday's podcast, I want to get a look at we could possibly have a Big Ten final national championship with Penn State and Ohio State. It'll be a rematch of a game this season that was played at Beaver Stadium. We're going to talk about that on Monday, plus our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. So join us. Have a great weekend in the meantime. Take a little time now. Go back and watch some other podcasts in the past. If you're new to us, we put them all there on the website, talkbig10.com. You can also get your merchandise there from your favorite schools. Reach out to us on Twitter or X at TalkBig10 and get the comments going back and forth on YouTube. That always is great. We love that a lot. So enjoy the weekend. Before you go, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe that button. Hit the subscribe button and follow this podcast right now for free. That way you'll get your favorite, or if you listen on your favorite podcast app too, you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Thanks for joining us. Can't wait till we talk again. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.